The stock market keeps ripping higher. A company that lost $5 billion last year just IPO'd at a $2 trillion valuation, and our government spent $30 million to fix the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool, only for it to start falling apart 2 weeks later. CNBC, the investment banks, the Treasury Secretary, the Commerce Secretary, the Secretary of Labor, the President, all of them on repeat, telling you the economy is strong, GDP is up, unemployment is low, foreign investment is pouring in. Meanwhile, you're paying $3.85 a gallon for gas. Groceries cost 30% more than they used to. Home prices keep climbing while interest rates refuse to budge. And you've got a friend, a cousin, a coworker, somebody who got laid off and has been job hunting for months in a market that isn't actually creating jobs. If you feel like you're being gaslit, like you must be living in some parallel economy where none of this adds up, you're not crazy and you're not imagining it. And I'm going to show you exactly what's going on. Yes, the pundits and politicians are cherry-picking numbers, GDP, unemployment numbers, the stock market setting records seemingly every other day. All of those are selected for very strategic reasons. They could be spun to try and make the economy look stronger than it actually is. Now, I'm not going to fully nerd out on why these numbers are not the best indicator of how things are going for the average American taxpayer. You can Google that if you want, but suffice to say they measure categories that apply to things like industrial production and overall commercial activity. Unemployment, for example, is actually higher than it's been in recent years, but hasn't reached 2009 level numbers, so people who haven't lost a job basically accept a point or two higher unemployment. For the additional 1.7 million unemployed people that single-digit increase represents, it's completely unacceptable. The Consumer Price Index, or CPI, which measures how the cost of a basket of goods changes over time, is one of the chief measures of inflation at the consumer level. But when it benefits their talking points or arguments, you'll see that these politicians and pundits talk about, quote, core inflation being below 3%. Core inflation strips out energy and food costs, two things that are major cost drivers for the average American household. I'm not sure why core inflation ever became a metric we should reference, let alone take seriously, considering what it excludes from its calculation. I'm sure we can trace its origins back to some politician or bureaucrat that realized that mathematical mirage made things seem less shitty. For the record, inflation is now above 4%, the highest it has been since the spring of 2023. And for many economists, anything above 4% is a signal the economy is weakening as consumer purchasing power is squeezed. The worst part is it dismisses the reality you may be feeling and actually living through. So here's the data to validate what you're feeling. If nothing else, this will help prove it's not just your imagination. You know, one of the best ways to support small YouTube channels like mine is to subscribe. If you like the content and you'd like to see more of it, consider subscribing. Back to the episode. Gallup's April 2026 poll shows a record 55% of Americans saying their financial situation is getting worse, higher than during the 2008 recession and 2020 pandemic shock. The same Gallup survey also found 55% reporting that recent price increases have caused financial hardship, and 28% worried about being able to pay minimums on credit cards, up 11 percentage points from 2021. Meanwhile, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said the average American felt good about the economy in their heart of hearts, and that if they didn't feel that way, they should, quote, turn off MSNBC. I guess we should expect this level of tone deafness from a guy who was already a multimillionaire before being appointed as the head of Treasury. He probably hasn't even pumped his own gas in the last 20 years. Bloomberg's cost of living analysis notes that while average weekly pay is up about 31% over 6 years, the perceived affordability squeeze persists because necessities like housing, food, energy, healthcare, education have moved faster than many incomes, especially for lower income households. Bloomberg goes on to write, quote, even with some headline improvements, modestly lower inflation, higher average pay, slightly more people feeling, quote, secure, the average or median household feels more squeezed and less optimistic compared to much of the 2010s and the immediate post-COVID rebound years, end quote. There's a name for this kind of economy. It's called a K-shaped economy because there's a sharp divergence between the average American and wealthy Americans. You can simplify this in thinking about middle-class working Americans who rely on a paycheck from an employer as earners, and the wealthy households who make most of their money through owning stock or business interests as owners. Owners love this economy because most of the gains are in the stock market or privately held businesses, where they make a lot of their money. Earners, on the other hand, need wages to increase, at least to keep pace with inflation. Earners need staples like groceries, gas, utilities, and housing costs to remain affordable. As I alluded to in the opening, most of these things aren't happening, so earners are left to wonder how they benefit from this supposedly strong and robust economy. They don't feel secure, and to them, this is all heading in the wrong direction. Wealth data shows the average household's net worth in the U.S. exceeds $620,000 due to extreme top-end wealth, but the median net worth is about $124,000. The large gap between average and median net worth underscores growing inequality and helps explain why macro strength doesn't translate into broad financial comfort. In this K-shaped economy, the owners are getting wealthier and the earners are getting squeezed. In essence, we have two different economies and two very different realities depending on your tax bracket. For anyone out there thinking the rate of inflation or rising costs aren't that bad, you're mathematically correct. Unemployment and inflation being up a few points aren't going to crash markets. There's no pending credit crunch. No major banks are in imminent danger of failing. But this is the boiling frog argument. Most people know this boiling frog thesis, that if you dropped a frog into a pot of already boiling water, it would immediately jump out because it realizes how hot it is all of a sudden. But if you put a frog in a pot and slowly brought the water up to boiling temp, the frog wouldn't clock the slow change and eventually become a boiled frog. That's what's happening to a lot of people because they don't realize that just as the temperature of that frog water is increasing slowly, persistently high inflation, consumer costs, and wage compression have a compounding effect. Consider this. For every percentage point of inflation, total inflation would increase 21% in just 5 years. Translated to dollars and cents, that means a household that needed $50,000 to cover its annual expenses in year zero would need about $57,950 per year 5 years later. I don't know about you, but $8,000 is a lot of money. This is the part of the episode where I would normally give you the other side of the argument or try to paint a rosier future ahead. The platforming of engineered math and political punditry around how strong the economy is has taken over almost all media cycles. So there's really no need to represent that argument any further. And unfortunately, I'm not confident the economy does get any better for earners, at least not in the short term. Right now, we have an economy built almost exclusively for the wealthy. From tax treatments that overwhelmingly benefit the rich to easing regulations allowing companies to build unchecked monopolistic control to unemployment of an entire generation of college grads, all of which is creating the largest transfer of wealth from the young to the old we've ever seen, it's a legitimately dark outlook over the short to medium term for earners. This K-shape is very real and very painful if you're on the lower leg of that K. But you're not helpless. First, know you are being manipulated and how they use the numbers selectively to try and get you not to believe your lying eyes. Second, plan for this economy to continue functioning outside your best interests. Take a longer look at big purchases and, where possible, make cuts to things that aren't absolutely necessary. Only 30% of U.S. households have an established monthly budget, while the rest wing it. Subsequently, 83% of households report spending beyond their budget each month. So maybe start there, basic budgeting. And most importantly, vote in local, state, and federal elections. Elected officials and the people they appoint control so much of the policy and regulations that determine how the economy works and for whom. Everything from the Fed Reserve interest rates to how the poverty line is calculated and is then used to determine who qualifies for public assistance. Remember, these are the same politicians who enter office as average Americans and leave millionaires, sometimes billionaires. Don't let them continue to prop up systems that are designed to benefit the top 10% on the back of everyone else. That's it for this episode. As always, like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.